Shall we? Good afternoon. I will call to order the April 7th, 2022 meeting of the Santa Barbara Local Agency Formation Commission. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Seves,
Present.
Commissioner Allen,
Here.
Commissioner Freeman,
Here.
Commissioner Guyer,
Here.
Commissioner Hartman,
Here.
Commissioner Richardson,
Here.
Commissioner Sierra,
Here.
Commissioner Stark,
Here.
Commissioner Waterfield,
Present.
Commissioner Williams.
Here. Thank you. At this time, please stand and join the commission in pledging allegiance to our flag. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our next item of business is the Assembly Bill 361 determination. Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak from the public? Would you please read the item?
Chair Stark and members of the board, Assembly Bill 361 determination is to hold a hearing pursuant to Government Code 54953E1A and B, and consider determination that 1, local health officials recommend social distancing to reduce transmission of COVID-19, and 2, as a result of the declared pandemic emergency, requiring in-person attendance at commission hearings presents an imminent risk to the health and safety of attendees, and therefore commission meetings may be held via teleconferencing pursuant to Government Code 54953E2.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak on this item from the public?
Chair Stark and members of the commission, at this time I would like to let members of the public wishing to be called on for public comment to use the raise hand feature button on Zoom or *9 on your touch tone phone. Chair Stark, I do not see that anyone wishes to provide public comment on this item.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or a motion? I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Mr. Chair, I would move that the board has considered the circumstances related to COVID and determined that continued remote meetings are appropriate and should continue.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second it. My basic philosophy is I can, look at my own risk factors and make my own decisions, but I cannot prejudge the health situations of my colleagues, their spouses, staff and their spouses, and I think having flexibility on this is really appropriate.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'm hearing none. Madam Clerk, hearing none, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Seves,
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman,
Aye.
Commissioner Guyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman,
Aye.
Commissioner Waterfield,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Chair Stark.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. The next item of business is the approval of minutes from the February 3rd, 2022 meeting. I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Chair Stark, for the record, I would like to note that there is no requests to speak under this item. Commissioner Seves,
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman,
Aye.
Commissioner Guyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman,
Aye.
Commissioner Waterfield,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Chair Stark.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. The next item of business is the oath of office for our newly appointed county members, Commissioner Doss Williams and Commissioner Bob Nelson. Madam Clerk, will you please administer the oaths? Congratulations, Commissioners, and welcome to Lafco. Now is the time for members of the public to speak on items that are not on the agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak on items not on the agenda?
Chair Stark and members of the commission, I have no request to speak under public comment.
Thank you. That concludes public comment. The next item of business is the approval of the consent calendar. Would any commissioners like to pull an item off the consent calendar? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak from the public?
Chair Stark and members of the commission, we have no request to speak.
No request to speak. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll move for approval as presented.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Seves,
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman,
Aye.
Commissioner Guyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman,
Aye.
Commissioner Waterfield,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Chair Stark.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. The next item is business item number 1. Will the clerk please read that item into the record?
Chair Stark and members of the commission, business item 1 is to consider recommendations regarding the proposed budget for fiscal year 2022-2023.
Thank you. I would call on our executive officer for a report.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, or good afternoon, Commission. Nice to see a little fuller house today. This is our proposed budget for the fiscal year 22-23. Our proposed budget is typically a two-prong approach. Lafco is an independent agency, and by legislation, we are obligated to carry out specific duties and objectives. And with that is the responsibility to adopt a budget to fulfill that purpose. The Government Code 56381 requires Lafco to conduct the public hearing that we are conducting today, and to adopt a proposed budget no later than May 1st, and then to transmit that budget to our member agencies, which is the county, each city, and each independent special district for review and comment, and to return to adopt a final budget no later than June 15th. So the recommended proposed budget is $616,700, and that's an increase of $161,210 over our current budget. And the main reasons are threefold. One is there was a 7% increase to your executive officer's salary back when you did the review in December. You've also authorized the addition of an additional employee to LAFCO, which we are currently in recruitment for, and this budget is to fulfill that position. Second is the general fund cost allocation from the county has increased by 166% as well. It's about $38,100 now. Last year it was $14,000, and so there's a significant jump to that. And lastly, there's a recommended $10,000 contribution to our contingency reserve, and that is to keep our reserves healthy so that we can have any unidentified expenditures in the future that may relate to some LAFCO need. Here is the table that proposes the 22-23 budget, comparing the last year's budget of 21-22. You can see salaries and benefits is an increase of about $114,000. Contractual services is status quo. Services and supplies have as an increase of $54,900, and that is the line item for the CAP plan. And then you have other charges is a status quo, and that's typically our electricity, water, utilities, trash that we pay as portion of for our office here in the county building. And that totals just over $600,000, and then we added $10,000 for a contingency addition, which brings us to the total of $606,700. So with that, it is recommended that the commission review this proposed budget, accept all public testimony, and approve the proposed budget as presented. Direct staff to distribute this budget to the cities, the special district, and the county as required, and then schedule the final budget hearing for May 5th to consider adopted budget. With that recommendation, we are also looking at various line items within this budget. When we announced and was authorized the position for the second analyst position, it was mentioned to potentially take on some additional assigned duties to assist in the need from the clerk's office. So we're looking at how we can adjust that need and meet those demands through this next budget. So we'll bring back a final budget that reflects those numbers in total. So that is our proposed budget for this year. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any.
Thank you. Are there board questions? I assume that concludes your presentation, Mr.
Concludes my
Prater.
presentation.
Are there any board questions on the budget? I see a light.
Well, I just wanted to understand the capabilities of so this budget would have both an analyst and a clerk that's separately paid for. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, currently we contract with the county clerk's office to provide clerking services, and that's a separate line item for contractual staffing services. We're looking at having the analyst position that was authorized to take on some of those duties. And so this budget includes all that full service within this budget.
Does that answer your question, Supervisor Williams? Supervisor, or Commissioner Hartman?
Could you elaborate a little bit more about the 166% county general fund increase?
So that is the cost allocation plan that the county prepares and adopts every year, and that is a look back at the cost and apportionment to all of the different departments, and Lafco is one of those. And I think it's a rolling look at what kind of services they provide to Lafco, and largely that is auditors' office services, CAO's offices services, any kind of report back analysis from the different various departments are covered in that. And so they have looked at that and determined that the increase to Lafco is the raise in the value that they've identified. So that was approved.
Thank you. And then would you summarize who pays for Lafco, how the costs are allocated?
Yeah, good. Thank you, Commissioner Hartman, through the chair. This is Lafco's budget is funded through the county, the city, and the special districts. They each pay 1/3 share of their apportionment. And so I can go back to this line item. So you look at that total amount in the attachment. That's provided in the Lafco budget, there's a line item of revenue for county agencies proportionment. And so that is essentially the total budget minus any additional revenues that Lafco receives through applications and fees or interest. The balance of that is the apportionment that's divided into 1/3 to each of those categories, county, city, special districts. And then that apportionment is given to the county auditor's office to look at state filed revenue reports over the previous year from each of those entities to look at their percentage of funding to pay for that portion.
So if I might then, so the people here representing the special districts, the cities, and the county are making decisions about those budgets that bind them. Is that correct?
Yeah, the commission is, as a whole, is making a decision about Lafco's budget to fulfill our responsibilities and roles. And each of those categories are representing their category of that line item of their 1/3%.
Okay. I also, for our new members, want to say it's Lafco custom, so people speak up. Even the alternates enjoy that privilege. So just want to make sure everybody knows that.
Is it back to the chair? Yes.
Well, I'll say something then. I think that the reason why you have us speaking now is because now that we have more information about the county's budget for the next fiscal year, it's not looking awesome. It's really not looking awesome. And so I'm just wondering about if you had any other ideas if the increase could be sort of phased in over a longer period of time. Because if I think this is a legitimate yearning to have Lafco have the capability that a Lafco should, but it is a lot all at once.
Thank you. I don't know if the EO wants to respond to that. I have a couple of questions for the chair, if you don't mind. Actually, I have 3 questions. The first one is my understanding correct that you're not asking us to approve a final budget today, but that you're going to come back in May when, if my understanding is right, some further discussions will occur, and there may be a modified recommendation, and it's possible that the final budget would not be adopted by us until June, when the various options have played out. Is that my correct?
Thank you, Chair, and Commissioner Williams, for those questions. Yes, I think at this point, this is a proposed budget. It's a two-step process where we propose a budget. The commission can look at these line items, and if they feel, particularly if the contingency number of $10,000 that's put in there could lessen the burden of the budget, overall budget, you can certainly look at that number and decide if you wanted to change that number in any way. And so that's an option for you as a recommendation for the final budget that will be coming back. And we are still working through the recruitment phase and what that means. And so that will likely delay our May meeting for a final budget until June, which would still meet our June 15th deadline.
Thank you. My second question is there sufficient flexibility built into the budget so that if we desire to hold one or more hearings up in the North County and in occasions when there are North County projects before our commission, is there flexibility in the budget to accommodate that?
That's a good question. I don't have the answer to that today. I think that's something that we will still continue to work through with our services, because as last recall, that was a staffing issue of shortages. And so we'll have to play out whether or not that still is the result moving forward.
Thank you. I have one question, it's the clarifying question which just came up now. Is my understanding correct that the fee schedule that we charge to applicants for various sorts of reorganizations is based on a calculation of the actual cost that it takes for us to process them, and it's not a revenue-raising measure? That was my understanding, is that it's intended to be a cost recovery measure and that it's calculated in some fashion.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the fee schedule structure is a cost allocation of time and services that's put into that effort. It's structured as a flat rate fee deposit towards the application. But as staff time is utilized, if we go over the allotment of that deposit, we request a refunding of our time.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the board? I see Mr. Freeman, Commissioner Freeman has his hand up.
Holly Sierra too.
And actually, Commissioner Sierra preceded Commissioner Freeman.
And Commissioner Garb.
Thank you very much, Chair Stark. My question is 163% increase from the county. I'm just hoping that our staff has reviewed it and believes that the 163% increase is valid, is justified. Our cities are having problems with, we're in contract disputes with our sheriff's department because the numbers they gave us didn't jive with what we're looking at. It just doesn't match up. Have you had a chance to study this? If you tell me that you've studied it and 163% increase looks good to you, then I'm good. But have you really reviewed this?
That would be for our executive officer, Mr. Prater.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawley, through the chair. I have had a chance to review the allocation plan. I asked a number of questions throughout that process. I was a little taken back at the increase, just because the number, as I looked at it over the years that predate my tenure, seemed to fluctuate up and down over the years. And this particular year, it seemed to be a little higher than others. But it has gone up in past years by 140%. Last year, it went up by 138%. And in some years prior to that, it was a negative in which the county gave credit to Lafco for services because they had overcharged in previous years. And so that's the information I can give you. I'm not, the formula in which the county uses is a little bit tricky to understand in its totality. And it is really a number that they derive at through a formula in the cost allocation plan that's outlined. And so I just sort of take the number on its face value as to what the county requests from it. And I essentially am able to just plug that number into our budget and see how it shapes our overall budget. So that's what I can tell you about that allocation plan.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, and Commissioner Freeman, then Commissioner Guyer.
Short sequence of questions. Well, actually, first of all, a statement I would like to make, which is that our Lafco has operated on skeleton crew essentially forever, and is operating with, and is my understanding, the cheapest, if not one of the cheapest Lafcos in the state. This is something that was really like stark to me when I went to one of the Lafco conferences, and I was speaking to somebody who I found out was at, I think was I keep thinking Los Olivos because they're right here. I'm thinking the county that's to our north, and SLO. There we go. At SLO County, and I was speaking to an employee whose entire job was working on nothing but maps, and I was thinking about how so many times we've had to ask our applicants for maps, or we've had to just do without maps, and they have somebody whose entire job is to just work on maps. And so I feel like, for what it's worth, the increases that we are looking at today are reasonable. We are trying to do something better and more comprehensive for our county, and have brought in the need for an assistant, and a lot of the explanation for our salary increases for the executive officer can be tied in back into things like inflation, and I think very reasonable increases. So given I feel the somewhat need to spend this money, the question then is it okay, and from where, and over what period of time can we get it from our constituents? And so the question that I first of all just want to verify, which I think I understand, but the cost increase today is going to be shared the same among cities, counties, special districts. So for example, whatever percentage increase we're seeing here, is that percentage increase just passed down into the dues that are being paid by all of our constituent agencies?
It's a little bit more nuanced than that, I would say, Commissioner Freeman, through the chair. Essentially, what we're looking at is the 1/3 allocation. I'll give you a rough number, is about 192,000. That 1/3 is passed down to each of the cities. The county pays its 1/3 as the total cost. The 8 cities divide up that 1/3 based on a prorated formula of revenues they received over the previous years. And so obviously with COVID having some impact in the tourism industry, some cities that heavily rely on that as their stream of revenue will have a smaller percentage over that course of time. So it's proportioned out based on what their revenues are. Same with the special districts. Their revenue stream, some are more heavily on charges for service for water and sewer rates, which is pretty constant. Others are generated on utility tax, which is less. So it kind of plays out. In totality, each of those are proportioned to their percentage share of that 192,000, and that becomes their ultimate payment.
That nuance makes sense, and for what it's worth, I mean, one might expect in the steady state over the course of a number of years that the individual revenue changes might work out. The reason why I ask for that background in some sense, and also I think to tie into some of the concerns that had come from the county just now, is that I know special districts have been working on setting up their budgets now for months. We've had, the Isla Vista Community Service District, a committee that's been working, a finance committee working on analyzing our budget. And it is occurring to me that now we're increasing the cost that each special district will have to pay. And we're not going to be apparently finalizing this until right before our deadline. What is the timeline with relation to us making certain that everyone else knows that they're supposed to pay us more money so they can incorporate that downstream into their budget? And then that's why I tie this back into the comments that had come from the people from the county about the whether this could be spread out over a long period of time. Maybe there's some way of utilizing some of the contingency money in order to allow for that to happen, because of the confusion that I think could result from essentially springing in at the last minute to a small cemetery district somewhere and saying, actually, your very tight budget, because they tend to work on a very tight budget, needs to suddenly take into account something that we just approved.
Good question, Commissioner and rest of the commission. So when the commission authorized the appointment of the analyst position, you also authorized for me to distribute the preliminary budget. So that preliminary budget was sent to all of the member agencies so that they have an indication of where the budget was going to go. That budget has been reshaped slightly with the increased cost from the CAP plan and an increased cost from pension, which were numbers that were derived after that particular preliminary budget was put together. And this budget number was distributed to all of the member agencies as well at this approach. So that information has been put out there for the agencies to know. There will be a final budget that comes. Like I said, if it gets pushed to June, then they'll know that. My goal for the June budget is to stick pretty tightly to this number. So whether or not a particular line item will change within the overall structure of the budget is to be determined as we figure out what the roles and duties are. But I'm looking to stick to this overall total number. And so the allocation to each of the 1/3 agencies would not change.
Thank you. Is that your question? Commissioner Guyer, I believe you were next.
Thank you. Well, the first thing with that 163% increase for the cost allocation, my recollection to it over the years that I've been on the commission, it is like a bouncing ball. You'll go 1 or 2 years, it could be a slight amount. Then all of a sudden, I do recall a time that it came negative. We got a credit. Reasoning for what we get, I've never been able to figure it out, and I've never heard a good explanation for it. It just kind of is what it is. On the cost allocation to the separate entities, I think it would be good if we came back. If I did my rough math correctly, we're looking at about $53,000 for the county. They have to pay that in their own lump. The cities split it up 8 ways. The special districts, my recollection to it is it's based off of a district's budget amount. And I think it would be good when we come back is to come back with maybe a sheet that would give the allocation for each city. I don't think that would be a tough math to do. My recollection, the last time I looked at it probably was 2 or 3 years ago. I think out of all the special districts, because of budget size, Goleta Water District gets hit the hardest. They actually pay, as I recall, 50% of the special district's allotment. And then the rest of it's split up by the rest of the special districts. So it'd be kind of nice to see a chart showing by special district what they pay. If that, I don't want to put a big burden of a lot of work, but I think it would be an easy thing to do because we've pulled that up once before. Anyway, that's my thought on it.
Thank you. Is there any response from?
Just a quick response to that. We
Rio?
could do that and at the next hearing that we have. What I'll do is I can pull from last year's allocation and what the percentage is and what the bills were. And you'll be able to see across the board how that allocation went out from last year's budget.
Thank you. Are there further questions from the board? Commissioner Nelson?
Yes, thank you, Chair Stark. I'm obviously the new guy, so I'm learning here. So when we're looking at salaries and benefits, that right now that's just one employee. Is that right? Is that just one FTE?
This budget includes 2.
Okay. So, but the 7% increase is really just for that one, because we're going to come in with a new starting salary for the extra position.
Correct.
All right. And that new position, when that comes in, will that have automatic merit increases? How will we end up working through that moving forward?
Commissioner Nelson, through the chair. So the way that works is that employee works underneath the executive officer and does an evaluation every year. And through their work effort, it's determined whether a CPI and a merit increase is warranted. So it's not an automatic.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking is, the 7% number, which I understand was decided this last year, although that probably is appropriate, maybe with inflation. I know we at the county have been negotiating with some of our labor groups, and we've been working through this, and that's a large number there on an increase there. And as we're trying to keep costs controlled, I understand the cost allocation is a lot for people to stomach by the percentage, but the sheer dollar increase is really coming from the increases in staffing and pay raise there for executive officer. And I'm not pointing that it's not warranted. I'm just wanting to make sure that we're keep an eye on that as we move forward to try to keep that in line with other agencies as we try to control costs. I think it's also really important because many of these positions are comparable positions to jobs that we have at our special districts or at the county or at the city, and we want to make sure that we keep those fairly in line. So moving forward, obviously not this budget, but in future budgets, it's some place that I would like to make sure that we're being very aware and cognitive of with that. Thank you.
Thank you. If that concludes the questions from the board, I would inquire of our clerk, are there any requests to speak from the public?
Chair Stark and members of the commission, I have no request to speak on this item.
Thank you. That would conclude public comment. The item is back to the board for discussion. Any board members and commission members like to discuss? That my understanding is that the first part of the commission presentation is for questions, and then the second part is for oration, if I may be
I'm
so
not sure
bold.
that my comments will rate the billing of oration, but I think that my fellow commissioners have made a very good case on why we should be going to a greater capability at Lafco. I just want folks to know that it's an extremely bad year for us to be making that change, and so it is not because I am against making that change that I am likely to vote against the budget or to ask for changes, because at this point, all the county supervisors are looking at, what happens to the narcotics team or the co-response or the backlog at the DA and the public defender. That's sort of like it is. It is not that every year it is such a zero-sum game. But this year is going to be a particularly, difficult zero-sum game, and so, that's I think where I'm at is that it's not that I would, so if somehow the majority agreed with me, it would not be that I would be trying to stop this change from happening. I would just want to understand if staff has a way to delay some of the change in order to make the increase to the county's budget more gradual.
Thank you. Any other commissioners care to discuss?
I just had one comment if I could.
Is that,
One of the
this
big-
Commissioner Sevis, is it?
Yes.
Thank you.
One of the biggest impacts to our budget obviously is the cost the county puts on us. And I mean, it's all dependent on the amount of applications we get. I think it was a couple of years ago where the county miscalculated the costs and actually came back for additional payments. And luckily we had that reserve to pay for it, but it almost drained it. So, this budget is just an estimate. It's meeting what we identify as our current needs based on past practice as far as activity. So, the costs are going up. We're all seeing it. So this is one of those that the cities, counties, and the special districts are going to have to absorb, and they will all do it. I guess my one question is to our executive officer is that when you sent out the first information to the different members, was there any response back?
Thanks, Commissioner Seves, to the chair. I have not received any feedback one way or the other from any of the members. Simply just asking, well, what's the number this year so that they can start planning for it?
Exactly. So, I think that's significant. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Waterfield, I believe, had a
Yes,
comment.
I do. Thank you, Chairman Stark. We have waited quite a while to get an analyst, and I truly believe this is something that we must have. It's not something that we can kick the can down the road any longer. This county is more active, more people are moving in, there are things that are going on, and I agree with my commissioners, Freeman and Seves, that it's very important that we get our executive officer help, and he needs it now. And we just need to continue going down this road. The county will always find the money. I mean, it's just a way of, you guys have always been good with your numbers, and let's just make this work. So I want to get this approved because we do need it.
Thank you. I have a note. Commissioner Guyer wishes to make a remark.
Yes, I'd like to make a comment. I think that, where we're at with this, we've already made the decision. We've taken an action to hire an analyst. What's before us now is not whether we should hire an analyst or not. What's before us on the table for action is to distribute the proposed budget.
Thank you. Are there any further comments, orations, et cetera, from commissioners?
I think some of my fellow commissioners are being less empathic and generating more conflict over this than is really necessary. For me to tell you in the second week of April for a fiscal year that begins in July 1, that yes, there is fiscal issues associated with this, I think is adequate notice, particularly because when tax receipts come in the first quarter at a certain time, or as the third quarter of a certain time, and you're getting it hot off the presses like we are. So you know, in my experience, the county just doesn't find money, and that, you know, I guess this will work out, but I'm trying to let you know that there are real consequences. And, you know, if the majority decides to move forward, I hope that my fellow commissioners won't send me notes asking for the county to spend money on the other things that will be before us, because they will be affecting also your jurisdictions.
Thank you. If, I think this is it. I have Commissioner Geyer's name written down, but I think he's already spoken. Did I miss something, Commissioner Geyer? I'm good. Thank you. If there are no further comments from the commissioners, I would entertain a motion to approve the recommendation, which if I understand correctly, is to move the budget forward with the understanding that we're probably going to have an additional report next month on the current status of things. Is that a fair assessment?
And
I will
also to
move
distribute
forward.
this budget to the cities, special districts in the county.
Yes, I would suggest as a friendly amendment, I guess, or suggestion to that, is that we put in a sentence or two advising the people of the relatively fluid state of the budget situation, so that they're given as much notice as possible as to what's going on.
Does the motion include scheduling the hearing?
The motion would be to approve the budget preliminarily and have a schedule a hearing for our May 5th, is it? For our May 5th meeting.
I'll move that.
I will second it.
You got that, Madam Clerk? You have the maker and the second. Thank you. It's now back to the commission. Is there any further discussion? We appear to be good. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Seves,
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman,
Aye.
Commissioner Geyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
No.
Commissioner Waterfield,
Aye.
Chair Stark.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-1.
Thank you. The next item is business item 2. Will the clerk please read that item into the record?
Chair Stark and members of the commission, business item number 2 is to consider recommendations to 1, authorize the executive officer to sign a contract with Streamline for a subscription agreement to design and develop a new website consistent with its submitted written proposal, and for an amount not to exceed $1,250, and 2, to provide direction regarding email domain host options.
Thank you. Mr. Prater?
Thank you, Chair and Commission. As you're aware, the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act requires Lafco to have a website. And so the county has been gracious enough to manage our website on our behalf since 2014. They developed the current website, and they help maintain and host all of that data. As we make changes, as we update our agendas, they kind of provide that service. And they provided that service at no cost, I will note. However, the system they currently use is called the Ectron system, and that system is essentially going away. So it's outdated technology that the county has contractually agreed to transition out of and move towards an overall integrated system with Civic Plus, which is a different independent service provider. Now, the county has reached out to Lafco to inform us that this website that they currently host will be going away, and that we will need to find a way to transition out of that and into something new. They have offered for Lafco to move with them and migrate with them through the Civic Plus platform. And that dialogue and dollar amount is attached in your staff report that indicates what that cost would be. And so as I received this information, staff took that into evaluation and sought other alternatives that might be a cheaper option. And we came up to the Streamline proposal, which really represents that lowest cost option that would include and meet all of our demands and requirements and provide enhanced features that we currently do not have through the Ectron's platform. Inherently, so my recommendation is that we move forward using the subscription model of the Streamline system, who currently provides over 550 agencies website service. And there's a handful already within the county that currently use Streamline as well for the independent special districts members. And there are other Lafcos throughout the state that use Streamline. And so they're a pretty reputable platform provider. And they are providing that subscription essentially at no cost to us because we are proponents of special districts. We're a member of the Special Districts Association. And so the $1,250 one-time fee is really to take the existing information off of our website and transition that over to their new platform, and they would migrate all that data for us on our behalf. And then we would maintain, staff would maintain the update to that website moving forward. So the inherent additional request as I make that recommendation to move towards that platform is that brings us to the email account. And so currently our email account is through the county as well. The county has migrated their email system as well. And so Lafco has a handful of emails through the county to maintain contact with the public and everybody else. And the county, as long as they are the maintainer of our website, has the discretion and the ability to forward all emails that come in through the Lafco domain name, which is the @sblafco.org account. They can move that and migrate that email content over to the new email platform, which is lafco@countyofsb.org. And so I maintain all of these email addresses and try to keep everything straight. And it's helpful that the county is able to move any email conversations that come through the @sblafco.org account to my other account. But they would no longer be able to provide that service because they would no longer be the provider of our website management. And so we would need to find an alternate management of that domain use of names. The county has indicated that they, in doing that, they have a subscription through hub.com that is the host of that domain name of @sblafco.org. And they would help Lafco and our staff transition and take over that account. And so we would maintain that account and we would separate from the county in total from email and website. And that seems to be a nominal cost to Lafco to be able to take over that account, somewhere on the order of $16 annually. So I felt that was a reasonable transition to occur. And so that is my recommendation, that we transition to the Streamline service agreement and take over the hub.com account for email. And that way, all of that transition, all of the content and all of the email streams that come in would not have to change for Lafco. We would just have a different provider and we would pick up the subscription cost for those. So that's my recommendation. We do have county IT personnel. I believe that they were going to zoom in link if there were any specific questions about the migration of what the county is doing. I can assist with any questions about Streamline and what they're capable of or what we're getting out of that platform. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. Could I ask one simple clarifying question before throwing it to the board or the commission for questions? It appears that doing nothing is not an option. Is that correct? So we can't just merrily go along with our antiquated email
Yeah,
system. It's
no.
going away.
Yeah, it's
So
going away.
we have a choice, essentially, is what you're suggesting, between going with the vendor that the county is using or going our own way to Streamline, is it?
Yeah, I laid out 3 options essentially. We can continue to have the county assist, and they would be there to help us through that. There's a certain dollar tag with that, which is pretty steep. We can use the Civic Plus platform and their services and use a smaller platform that they offer, which has a lesser dollar amount attached to it. But still something higher than we've been paying. Obviously, we've been paying $0 for the last 8 or so years. Or we can go with the Streamline approach, which kind of maintains that low cost for us.
That leads me to my last question, and that is the option that you recommend, the
that's the
Streamline approach. I noticed a statement that you made that says, and then staff will maintain the system. Which staff are we talking about?
Well, we currently have a contract with the clerk of the board to assist in maintaining our website. And so the structure has been, they essentially were the interface between county IT in order to maintain that. Obviously, county IT will be going away, but we still have the contract with the clerk services. And then you have myself and hopefully an onboarding member to be staff for Lafco. And we will be collectively maintaining that website. And we did do a kind of rehearsal and practice test. It seems pretty straightforward and easy. So I think based off the 3 staff members that are here present, we feel comfortable that we can maintain the website through Streamline.
Thank you. Life indeed is an adventure. I would ask if there are commissioners who have questions at this point about this.
Chair? Do we sacrifice anything in terms of security?
I do not believe so. Streamline has been around, and they provide all of the security options and backbone structure of all of that for us on our behalf.
Did you have Commissioner Freeman?
So I've talked with you about this before, Mike. The main thing I'm interested in is the extent to which the existing data, the history of all of the agendas and attachments and even the little public comment letters that we have on our website are able to be transitioned over to the new system. And I'm just want to make certain that when we, whatever migration that these different companies are talking about is a comprehensive migration.
I was ready for that question. We did talk about this. And that's part of the reason why I liked Streamline's option beyond the low dollar cost is we can, they will host unlimited content, unlimited data support for that. And so we can migrate all of that data over and create a history of all of that. So we lose nothing, and we can upload large data files and they will receive all of that. So that's a benefit for us to keep moving forward.
That is very exciting to hear. One thing that I found somewhat confusing is that people who don't know, my background is in technology and in I did IT for a while, things like that. The email and websites are different things, so we should be able to have our website with one provider and email with another provider, but thankfully the cost on the email is so negligible and there's probably benefits just having it separate anyway that I'm great going along with that plan. But I did find a little confusing that the county was telling us that they just could not host the email if we switched over our website provider. But
To clarify to that point, the county can still host our email, but they migrated our email account to an @countyofsb.org. And So therefore, our current email off the website and what we get is an @sblafco.org, which is a different and distinct domain. They hold the rights to that. They have registered for that. And as long as we sort of tie ourselves to them, they can continue to feed any email and reroute that to the county's email system that I operate from. But the moment we detach, they lose the ability to do that. And so that's why we would ask for a transition and taking that registry and moving that under LAFCO.
Thank you. That same point then, I'm very excited about this plan. Isla Vista Community Service District uses Streamline, as do a number of other special districts throughout the county. I've seen other special districts try something and then move to Streamline. I don't think anyone's been dissatisfied with Streamline, so.
I recognize Commissioner Richardson.
I'm a little concerned about the costs. What I understand you're saying is that we're going to pay $1,250 one time, and then $16 a year for each email address, and then every other cost is zero. It scares me when I hear those kind of numbers. You know, have you looked into other platforms to see what other LAFCOs are doing? Are they on this Streamline platform? And I understand that the other option you offered is very expensive, but maybe with expense comes quality. So I just had those basic questions.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Richardson, through the chair. So there are other LAFCOs that do use Streamline throughout the county. Marin County is one that recently transitioned to them as well. I'm not sure what their costs are. I didn't look at their contract, but they do utilize that service, and then they utilize a county email. So they have that's how they're set up through them. My previous employer, Lafco, uses a GoDaddy account as their provider, both email and website, and those costs are slightly higher than what was being presented in this particular report. So I feel like Streamline is a pretty known provider, and as indicated from another commissioner, I don't think anybody has had anything negative to say about what their capabilities are. I think the reason why it's such a $0 cost online moving forward is because they're really proponents of special districts. And since we are also in that same space of being proponents of special districts, that's why they're offering it at a no charge rate, because they really want to get the message out that special districts are important and they provide valuable service. And so we're on the same page in that realm. But I think that's why there's a low cost associated with that. Not so much that you get what you pay for kind of a scenario.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from commissioners? Hearing none, I would ask, are there any requests from the public to speak on this matter?
Chair Stark and members of the commission, I would just like to remind members of the public who are joining us today, if you would like to speak on any items, to please use the raise hand feature. Chair Stark, we have no request to speak.
Thank you. That concludes public comment. The item is back to the board for discussion. Is there any board members wish to comment further on this matter, this item? Commissioner Freeman.
Actually, I just realized I do have a quick, was there a recommendation or request from staff between the two email hosting options? Was there a recommendation or request from staff between the two email hosting options? Is that part of what we should be bickering about today, is who we send our $15 a month to?
There is dialogue between staff and county IT about how that works and functions, and county IT has assured me that they will help us make that transition.
Thank you. I actually have a question that I forgot to ask of Mr. Prater, and I hesitate to do so for reasons that will be obvious. Is there a mechanism by which Lafco can put an automatic erasure option on with respect to the emails that it does, so that every so often they dump the emails while retaining some sort of mechanism for retaining those emails when there's a threat of litigation or some other reason why we need to keep the email string?
Chair, Council, I was.
The question is whether we've got the ability and the email system that we will purchase to institute a system that provides for automatic destruction of emails at some prearranged interval, plus the ability to put a hold on emails in the event we get a demand to retain them, so that we don't get accused of spoliation of evidence. Take my word, you don't want that to happen.
Good question. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe somebody from county IT is online that could answer that. As I understand it, the retention of email right now is at the discretion of your executive officer who maintains that account. And so I have emails that range in various dates, anywhere back from pre my tenure of conversations that are still active projects that I've retained for knowledge of what's been said on that project. And then as we move through the process, I typically come up on a 1-year deadline and expunge any conversations that are not germane that's needed. If it's needed for the record, I print it and put it in the file. Otherwise, I eliminate the email.
Thank you. You might want to put a little feather in your hat or note in your hat to revisit that subject at the appropriate time with our council. Commissioner Aceves has a comment.
Yeah, I think the discussion is very interesting. I don't think we've ever entertained a public records policy. That's maybe something that should come back, so that the board gives authority that after certain years, the records are purged. So we don't have to keep them forever. So I think that's for a future discussion.
Thank you. I would concur to that that's something that you need to look at going forward. If I remember correctly, if you don't have a policy, it's awful difficult to justify withholding records. Commissioner Freeman.
I'm sorry, I'm actually still asking my previous question. So it might just be that I just very much misunderstand the structure of our agenda item, but we have the alternatives for website hosting, and then we have the 2 email hosting options. And is part of our motion today to direct you to choose one of the 2 email hosting options? And if so, do you have a recommendation of which of the 2 it should be? Because I didn't catch that. Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Freeman. That was the discussion that council and I was having. So the recommendation is to approve alternative 2 and option 2 on the email. Alternative 2, which is the Streamline subscription service, with option 2, transitioning the hub.com registry to Lafco.
Okay, thank you so much.
Madam Clerk.
Chair Stark and members of the commission, Mr. Mark Garcia is present on Zoom today, and he has also sent the following message. Most email hosting services allow you to create policies regarding retention range, as well as marking emails that will not be deleted per litigation hold or some other need to maintain. And if Mark is available to answer any additional questions you may have.
And do I assume correctly he is from County IT?
That is correct.
Thank you. That's a helpful explanation. Any further discussion from the commission? Hearing none, or seeing none for that matter, I would entertain a motion to approve. That would be the staff recommendation. The recommendation is the staff recommendation as described by Mr. Prater.
I will move to direct staff to move forward with alternative number 2 to work with Streamline and email hosting option number 2.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Seves,
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman,
Aye.
Commissioner Guyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Commissioner Waterfield,
Aye.
Chair Stark.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Am I correct that we're on business item 3?
That is correct.
Thank you. Would you please, clerk, please read business item 3 into the record?
Chair Stark and members of the commission, business item number 3 is to consider replacement appointment of 3 commissioners to the commission's Standing Committee on Legislation.
Thank you. This is a standing committee. I would ask for a report from the executive officer.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Yeah, this item is placed on your agenda because the county had replaced our 3rd member on our legislative committee of Commissioner Lavalino. And so with the loss of him, we need to now reappoint a member from this commission. And I'll note that the eligibility requirements is it's open to anybody.
So it does not have to be, it could be a county member, but it doesn't have to be a county member.
Correct.
Thank you. And could you please give some information as to how many times the legislative committee meets, or whether it meets as requested, et cetera, so we have an idea what the burdens of or being on the...
My understanding, it's needed as needed. Meet as needed. I have yet to have a meeting in my tenure, but I've only been here just under 2 years. I'm not sure what the previous use of that board is. But essentially, it's used as a platform when Lafco has an item that they want input from various Lafcos throughout the state, that we can quickly convene a ledge committee much faster and more responsive than we can the full commission.
Thank you. I understand. Meets as needed, and if I understand the scope of of our legislative committee, is it deals with not only legislation that's peculiar to Santa Barbara County in some fashion, but also to LAFCOs generally, and they might want some screening before the full commission votes on it. I'll call for volunteers. Commissioner Hartman volunteers. Do we have any other volunteers?
I'll nominate Commissioner Hartman.
Thank you. Do we need to second the nomination? I would call for a second on the nomination.
I will second.
We have a second? Is there?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
would it be out of order to discuss the necessity of having a legislative committee?
It wouldn't be on the agenda. We don't have to, I assume we put it on a future agenda. Do we need a legislative committee is separate, I think, and distinct from the question of, since we've got one,
Right.
do we have to fill it?
Yeah.
Let me suggest, and we could put that on a future agenda. It's a rational question, but meanwhile, I think we should have a full complement.
For the record, this issue came before the board when I was a voting member, and I voted against it. So now you know how I feel. Thank you.
Well, that would depend. I hate to quote one of our former presidents, but that depends on what the meaning of it is. Did you vote against the abolition or for the abolition?
It was for the initiation of.
Oh,
I felt like that the Lafco could do the job adequately, that we didn't have to get it. We didn't need a filter.
thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any requests to speak from the public on this?
Chair Stark and members of the commission, we have no request to speak.
Thank you. Item is back to the board for discussion. Hearing none, I would call for, there's a motion and a second. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Seves?
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman?
Aye.
Commissioner Guyer?
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman?
Aye.
Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Commissioner Waterfield?
Aye.
Chair Stark?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Brings us to business item number 4, if I am correctly. Will the clerk please read that item into the record?
Chair Stark and members of the commission, business item number 4 is to consider support for Assembly Bill 1581, the 2022 Omnibus Bill, and Senate Bill 938, protest provisions.
Thank you. Mr. Executive Officer, do we have a report on this, please?
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. This is our pre-annual omnibus bill that Cal Lafco has asked that each Lafco consider and support and submit a letter on behalf of support. The omnibus bill is really a technical, non-substantive changes to the Cortese-Otzerberg Act every year to make sure that it reads adequately and properly. If there's any issues or contesting of whether its nature, it's kicked out of the omnibus bill and moved to some other bill if deemed appropriate. And so that bill is being asked to have a support letter that is found in your attachment A and B, the bill itself. So we're requesting that you authorize the release of that letter on behalf of the commission. And the second item is the Assembly Bill 938, which is the protest provisions. Cal Lafco had also asked, while we were on break from having a meeting, and it was a time-sensitive matter, and so your staff consulted with the chair and legal counsel as to the appropriateness of submitting a letter as that item was heading towards the Senate Finance Committee before we could meet today. And so I prepared that letter and submitted that on our behalf. The Senate Finance Committee has passed that bill and moved it to the Senate floor. And so that can be found in your attachment C and D. So the recommendation is to accept the support letters and submit those to the legislative.
Do I understand correctly? We do not need to send a letter specifically directed to the protest provision. That's going to commission, and you've already sent a letter with respect to that? So we're down to the omnibus bill, is that right?
Yeah, so I've already sent the letter on behalf of the protest provisions. If the commission wishes to retract that letter or alter that letter, then you can give me direction to do that. If you're in support of that letter, then we've fulfilled that recommendation.
We don't need a separate vote to ratify it, I guess is my question.
It's a good question. You can ask.
Just in case, and to partially make up for my guilt of taking so much time on item 1, I'm going to just move that we support both bills and empower the executive director to send letters to that
That's an
effect.
excellent idea. We should probably check and see if there's any public comment before doing that, but I hold that thought.
Chair Stark and members of the commission, we have no request to speak on this item.
Thank you. If there are no questions or comments from commissioners, I would.
Over here.
Commissioner Richardson.
In my mind, this is an example of why we don't need a local committee a legislative committee, is that this is the kind of work that Cal Lafco should provide us as a service as members. If in the true example of our legislative committee, maybe they should have generated this rather than Cal Lafco. If you understand what I'm trying to say. I think that Cal Lafco is doing a fine job of keeping us informed of legislative issues. Thank you.
I do. My understanding is there was a motion made by Commissioner Williams. Was there a second?
I will second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion from commissioners? I would know, my understanding is this protest petition, Cal Lafco has been working on these protest provisions for years. I mean, 2 or 3 years they've been massaging this particular thing. There's been a lot of work going into it. In any event, if there's no further comment from the public, I would ask the clerk to call the roll.
Commissioner Seves,
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman,
Aye.
Commissioner Guyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Commissioner Waterfield,
Aye.
Chair Stark.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. The next item is business item number 5, and I would ask the clerk to read that item into the record.
Chair Stark and members of the commission, business item number 5 is to present a certificate of appreciation to Steve Lavanino.
Thank you.
Chair.
We have executive officer. Yeah.
We're going to call a timeout on that. I don't know if anybody has reached out to Supervisor Lavalino, and I don't see his presence here today. So we'll just request that we continue this item until May 5th.
No objection. We'll continue it. I will hand the one-of-a-kind handcrafted plaque to our council. Thank you. We'll come back in May. Let's see. We are now at information item number 1.
Mr. Chair, a good point of order from the clerk. Could we please have a motion to continue that item to the May 5th
Certainly.
agenda?
I will entertain, good catch. I would entertain a motion to continue business item number 5 to the May meeting.
So moved, and we'll wrangle Supervisor Lavanino for that meeting.
We need we should have a second.
I will second.
Motion and a second. I would suggest, since Commissioner Williams has left the room, Commissioner Nelson gets a chance to vote.
That is true. Commissioner Nelson,
Aye.
Chair Stark.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. You're off to a smooth start to your tenure. Thank you. Let's see. We have information item number 1, is it? Did you read that?
Chair Stark and members of the commission, information item number 1 is to receive and file a status report from the Los Olivos CSD regarding the wastewater treatment project.
I would ask our executive officer to report. Note we have representatives of the CSD here.
That's my report. We do have members of the Los Olivos CSD available to present to your commission a status update. As part of their 2-year extension that the commission granted, we requested some periodic updates as to how they are proceeding in the process. I will note in my report a clarification on that. I indicated that they were on track to hold their Prop 218 vote by, I believe I said summer or something of that nature of this year. Technically, it's within that 2-year time frame. So the 2-year time frame is a little bit beyond summer. But certainly, their president, Lisa Palmer, is here, and she can clarify as well their status.
Welcome, Ms. Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Prater. Chair, is it on? Chair Stark and members of the board, it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon. Again, I'm Lisa Palmer, president of the Los Olivos Community Services District. I'm here with my colleague, Tom Fayram, who I think most of you know. I'm going to let Tom do the majority of the update, but I just wanted to express our gratitude as a district for your ongoing engagement with our journey that we're on here. And one item that I wanted to bring to your attention that was not in the update, because it just happened last week, was we have hired a new general manager as of April 1. His name is Guy Savage. He's a former assistant CAO from the County of San Luis. He has extensive governmental management background, and he's a 27-year resident of Los Olivos. So we are very excited and that he's joining our team at this critical juncture, and I think really has not only the management skills, but an intimate knowledge of the community. There's no ramp time for him. He's been there, front row seat through the whole discussion about the need and the formation into the progress of the district. So I just that was, anyway, like I said, that was last week. So I thought that was pertinent to today. Tom and I are both here for questions if you have any after his update, but I will turn it over to him. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
And I might note that Mr. Savage's hiring on April 1st was not a joke. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, my name is Tom Fayram, and I am the Vice President of the Board of Directors of Los Olivos Community Services District. And I'm going to go through this presentation, hit some of the high points, and then, of course, we'll be available for your questions. So some of the items completed to date, we've had some extensive ongoing outreach in the community. We've had workshops that we'll talk about a little bit later since our formation. But really one of the most important aspects is we've established some really good working relationships with the regulatory agencies, including the County Environmental Health Services and the Regional Water Control Board in San Luis Obispo, both which are partners in this journey. Next, please. I mentioned about the public workshops on the project description. I think we have consensus in the community of what that project is, and now we're further developing that project. We're pursuing funding, which is extremely important. We'll talk about some of the grants that we've received to date, because with the working revenue that we have in order to put this project together, it's very challenging, and we've been fortunate to be able to get that financial support thus far. As your commission might recall, our annual revenue is about $200,000 a year. So to do some of the work like the design of a multi-million-dollar system, you need a little bit more working revenue to do that, and we've been successful thus far to get that. We have been undertaking technical studies, both of our groundwater basin for a monitoring plan and other work. Probably one of the most important elements right now that we have, and that's the last bullet on this slide, is we've started the design of our system. Obviously, if we're going to get to an assessment vote and be able to go to the community and ask for approval of a project like this, we need to have the design, because we have to understand what the costs are of that. And so we are fortunate to have started that, and we expect to have our first review of that later this summer. Next, please. So we're in the middle of doing our wastewater loading study. Obviously, if you're going to do a wastewater treatment plant, you have to know how much the flow is that's coming in. So we're underdoing that. I mentioned the groundwater monitoring plan, and we will be actually installing a new monitoring well to be able to actually quantify the status of the shallow groundwater system. I might note that a lot of this data is relatively old, some of it dating back to the 70s or before. We've worked with the county LAMP update process. One of the issues we've had is that as individual residents in our district have had problems with their septic system, they've been looking at extremely expensive changes to those septic systems. And in effect, we're breeding opponents to a successful Prop 218 election, which is really what our board is looking forward to, is a successful Prop 218 election, not just a Prop 218 election, but a successful Prop 218 election. The grant research, we've hired a consultant to look at what grants are available, and especially for the construction aspect of this, because once we know the cost, we'll be able to tell, well, what grants are available and how much can we seek to help offset the cost of this expensive project. And then finally, the last bullet, the financial model, which I believe we're going to approve or consider, the board will consider at our meeting next week, which is to start the assessment engineer's report, of which the first task you'll be completing is a financial model where we can plug in what are the costs to an individual homeowner or an individual business owner. And then that's going to be really important to weigh in, well, if we get a grant for this amount, that leaves the community with that amount, and to be able to determine, what again is something that can be approved by our community. Next one, please. As I mentioned, a lot of initial work is being done, including the project 30% design that Stantec Engineers, with an office here in Santa Barbara, is doing the project design. We expect to see that 30% design this summer, and then an initial estimate of cost will come with that as well. Then we're also looking at the effluent disposal. Obviously, when you have a wastewater treatment plant, you're going to have water that comes out the other side, and so how do we deal with that? I want to talk about the funding briefly, because we are very appreciative of the county EHS, who has supplied $180,000 to do some of this important work. We've expended $84,000 to date. But then the really big item that we just recently received is a $300,000 that's a 50% match, so 150 with the state, to do our technical work, of which that's what our design is being funded. If we hadn't had that grant, we would not have been able to execute a contract to start the design. So we're very appreciative of the state for matching with that. And obviously, we'll be going back to them for construction monies. So steps remaining, obviously, we want to continue to stay in touch with our community and have public workshops when the design's available. And then we have to start talking with the community about what the funding options are and what the assessment options look like. Part of that will be seeking grants for construction. You'll note I've mentioned that several times because it's extremely important. We have a connection, we have about 400 connections in our community. And with a system of the costs that I fear we're looking at, we are going to be really interested in receiving help for funding part of this. Permitting in CEQA, when we finish the initial design, we can look at initiating CEQA. And then ultimately, when we have enough information to get a successful benefit assessment vote, then we're going to do that. And then we can advertise, award, and construct that project. And then as a part of that, obviously, we have ongoing operations and maintenance. That concludes our brief report. We appreciate the opportunity to come back in front of Lafco. Good to see you all again. And both President Palmer and myself are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. Are there any questions, comments from the board? Commissioner Freeman.
I'm mostly actually interested in hearing more about, you were saying, working with the county to do the lamp updates as part of helping the community not have to take on the costs of the system upgrades in the meantime. And I'm curious, because I know that's one of the concerns many people have had in the past. And I think that hearing more about the work that you've been doing on that might...
We'll let our president take that.
Working with EHS to provide input on what that might look like. And EHS is working with the regional board to make sure, again, we're trying to make sure that the systems get taken care of and are properly maintained, that our water quality is maintained in this interim period. But if there's visibility and leeway we can give residents in that interim period while we're moving toward a project, that's what we're looking for. So it's a little bit of a, a balancing act, but at the end of the day, it's a decision by the county and the regional board. We clearly have said, here's what we'd like to see, and here's what we think is tenable for the district, and what would be helpful. But ultimately, as I said, that's a county policy decision. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just excited to hear that there is progress being made on that front.
Well, so, yeah. To that, if I could, and this is a little not too in the weeds, but we have had feedback to one of the roles we've been trying to take as a district in the interim is more of an ombudsman. While we don't have regulatory authority, we are trying to work with residents who have issues, work with county EHS to see if there's an interim solution, and that process has been going well. Again, with the goal being setting us up for a successful benefit assessment process where we're not having people, double down in the interim, but with a $40,000 system and an assessment coming down the pike. So, thank you.
I think it's been great to see your district moving forward and being able to make the progress it's been able to make given the pandemic and losing your general manager and various issues. But I think you're going in the right direction. It seems like you're on target for your current deadline. So I'm very excited.
Thank you. Is there any, do you want to?
Yes, well, I just wanted to second what Supervisor, what Commissioner Freeman had to say that congratulations on your general manager and all the progress you're making. I'm amazed really at the talent that from such a small little community, your board and now a general manager from the community, that level of talent is pretty amazing. And I think you've been moving forward with a lot of care and detail. I remember Ms. Palmer, you talked about sharpening your pencil and making sure that you got the best deal you could for your residents. There is a lot of money at the state and federal level right now, so I'm optimistic about your chances of landing grants for construction. I'm also thinking that for your timeline, it's not entirely within your control, the timing of these grants and all. And so I just want to flag that from my perspective, you're working with all due diligence, and that's what we're eager to see. But I'm not prepared to hold you to something that is outside of your control as long as you're working really, really hard to keep with the timeline, the parts that you control.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just to add on to Commissioner Hartman, the state grant, we had original approval for that grant. It was in the summer or before of last year. It wasn't until December, indications were because of COVID and this process to get through the state process to where we actually signed the contract. So we were approved back then, but it didn't actually take place till December, and so then we quickly got Stantec going. But that shows some of the items that are out of our control. We were ready to approve that grant as soon as we could get a grant agreement from the state, and it took until December.
Supervisor Hartman, in fact, I talked to Wendy Mata from Congressman Carvajal's office yesterday. I've been talking with Senator Lamone's staff, and we're kind of in this period where we don't have a shovel-ready project, right? We don't have anything approved to fund on the construction side. So we're a little premature there, but I am working with them on trying to identify if there is anything else available for planning and development and environmental review. So just to assure you, we're shaking the bushes there. Thank you.
Thank you. My understanding, Commissioner Richardson.
I just want to say I'm just amazed at the tenacity that Lisa and Tom and crew have in getting this project going. I can remember the efforts they put forth just to become a CSD, and they didn't know they were the beginning of a real project to get that boulder up the top of the hill. And I think they're doing a fantastic job, and they're to be commended for it, bringing the community together and that sort of thing.
Thank you. My understanding is we do not need a motion. There's no need for us to set anything further. And my assumption is that the CSD will report to us as previously scheduled. Thank you very much for coming down here. The next item, will the clerk please read? I might have to write information item number 2. Yes.
Chair Stark and members of the commission, information item number 2 is to receive and file an update from Lafco.
Mr. Prater.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Yeah, this is just a summary of the Lafco activities. We had prepared this at a previous meeting where we had left off the Assembly Local Governance Finance Committee annual report was not able to be published in time, and so we published that and included that as part of this attachment here, along with other Lafco information. Obviously, their bulletin on the protest provisions, which we now know has progressed quite far from where that bulletin is at, and their quarterly report. So this is just to keep the commission up to speed with that information.
Thank you. And my understanding is the headline, the Lafco canceled the staff conference, but they're going forward with the October Lafco meeting. I believe it's an in-person meeting in Newport Beach. Do I understand correctly?
Yeah, so the indication is that the staff workshop in spring is being planned and moving forward with an indication that they're going to hold that as an in-person, following by the annual conference as well in Newport Beach of next year.
Thank you. Do we have any requests to speak from the public on this matter, Madam Clerk?
Chair Stark and members of the commission, I have no request to speak.
Are there any commissioners have any comments or questions about this matter? No, there's no vote necessary. It's an information item. And we'll proceed to information item number 3 and ask the clerk to please read that item into the record.
Chair Stark and members of the commission, information item number 3 is to receive and file a report on the Lafco 2022 current tract legislation.
Mr. Executive Officer.
Thank you, Chair. Commission, this is a listing as of March 25th, I believe, is where I published that date, of all tract legislation from Lafco and their status of where that is, along with some of their agendas from some of their ledge committee meetings report, in which I participate via Zoom and monitor the activity that's going on. In my report, I pulled out and highlighted 3 bills that relate to climate or some version of that. So if there are any particular bills that the commission wants me to dive further into, we can obviously bring one back on an agenda and highlight what that bill is about. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Were there any requests to speak from the public on this?
Chair Stark and members of the commission, we have no request to speak on this item.
Any questions or comments from commissioners? Hearing none, I have a question for our executive officer, sort of a clarification. Is my understanding correctly that as you go through the municipal service reviews for the agencies that are on tap, I guess this year's water and sanitation agencies primarily, am I correct that they're being asked to identify whatever strategies they have for combating climate change as part of that review?
Correct. So we have asked each of those agencies to identify any climate action plans or sea level rise assessments that they've prepared and performed, and we will include some analysis in the MSR report.
So we're going to find out if they're all the CSDs are buying Teslas and have, you know, evacuation plans.
Well, I should clarify. Mainly, it's the point of whether or not those plants are in jeopardy, as we acknowledge that sea level is rising, and are they doing something to offset that and direct or plan in advance of loss of their facility in essence. Not so much are they buying Teslas.
Well, thank you. My assumption is we don't micromanage what they're doing in climate change, but we want to ensure that they have some plan in place to do their share in the effort towards reducing footprints, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you. Are we ready to proceed to the next item? I believe we are. Item number 5, if I have that correct. 4.
Chair Stark and members of the commission, information item number 4 is to receive and file a report on special district election.
Mr. Prater.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, the special district selection resulted in a ballot measure that was, or a ballot for appointment of special districts, so excuse me, and that ran for a term until April 11th, so that's on Monday. That is anticipated to close. There is a need for a minimum of 20 ballots to be returned, and I believe we are somewhere around 19.
No.
As you recall, the reason for the mailed-in ballot process is we conducted an initial in-person meeting selection committee where we needed 20 members to be present, and we had 16 members present. And so that resulted in us having to run a mailed ballot process. Along with this mail ballot process, the Special District Selection Committee has asked that we include a second ballot to give the executive officer authority to go straight into a mailed ballot process in the future. And that one's trailing, I think, by about like 17 votes that we've received. So we need a few more in that area, in that arena. So I encourage our special district members that are seated here to reach out. I have sent out a reminder at the beginning of this week to get their ballots in, but if we can get another encouragement from our district representatives to get a ballot in. We just need to get to 20 at this point. So that's our report.
Thank you. Now, are there any requests from the public to speak on this?
Chair Stark and members of the commission, we have no request to speak on this item.
Any comments from commission members? Commissioner Freeman.
The one question I have is, in the case that we receive enough ballots for the special district member, voting member position, but we do not receive enough ballots for the move directly to mail-in ballot in the future, does that second action auto fail, or can we have an extension on that second item separate from the first item, or how would that work out in that case?
A good question.
Yeah, it
Honestly,
occurred to me that we'd have a different number of votes for each. That was just
it just happened to be that some of the representatives from those districts chose not to answer that second ballot, and so it became a little bit shy on that tally. As I understand it, I'll confer once we get to it with our legal counsel when we get to that point, but the essence is that the executive officer is to run the election of the district member seat. And it's really the special districts and their rules and procedures to run that portion. As a courtesy, I ran it parallel so that we could likely, tap into efficiencies to get votes returned. But once we get enough votes for the elected member, my portion of the role stops. And if the Special District Selection Committee wanted to continue that on, they can certainly do that.
Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just
Mr.
excuse
Dillon.
me, an additional comment. The executive officer has some discretion to determine a in-person meeting is not feasible and go straight to a mailed ballot election if he or she decides. And that was Mr. Hood's position for a few years, but I know he was requested more than once by a few district members to at least try the in-person meeting, which of course we didn't quite get there, but Mr. Prater tried.
Thank you. Hope springs eternal. Should I ask, are there members from the public who wish to speak on this? I don't think so.
Chair Stark and members of the commission, we have no request to speak on this item.
Thank you. This is an information item. We don't need a motion. I would ask for the clerk to read information item number 5 into the record.
Chair Stark and members of the commission, information item number 5 is to receive and file a report on file number 2022-02 for Via Maria annexation to the Goleta Sanitary District.
Mr. Executive Officer.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this is just a notification to the commission that we have an application that was filed by petition for the Via Maria annexation. It entails 3 parcels in that area into the Goleta Sanitation District. And so that is running through its process. I'm hoping to have that back to the commission either in, if we're lucky, May, but most likely in June.
Thank you. Are there any requests to speak from the public on this, Madam Clerk?
Chair Stark and members of the commission, we have no request to speak on this item.
Any comments from commission members? Thank you. It's an information item. We don't need a motion on this. We shall proceed to information number 6, which I would request the clerk to please read into the record.
Chair Stark and members of the commission, information item number 6 is to receive and file a report on pending Santa Barbara Lafco applications.
Mr. Executive Officer.
Thank you. So this is an update on the pending applications that have been received and that your staff is working on. As you can see, the latest application is a small reorganization for the Almaguer property into the city of Goleta and into the Goleta Lighting District. So they've gone, it's currently at the county surveyors going through map and legal check review. They have resubmitted their corrections. That particular project also has to go through a property tax negotiation exchange because it is into a city. So it still has some bit of process left to finish. Then we've got the Via Maria annexation into the Goleta Sanitation District. Again, they're currently at their county surveyor, getting their map and legal. Again, I think they're getting close to finalizing that. And when that's ready, it'll be ready to take to hearing. Excuse me. Item 3 on that list is the Holiday Hill sphere of influence and annexation into the Goleta Sanitation District as well. That entails a land use application that they've submitted to the county to convert some housing and tie into the sanitation district. And so that application has been placed on hold, and we've give them a letter indicating that once county has.
Thank you. If that's any further comments, questions on this, it's, again, is an informational item. I thank you. We will now go to commissioner announcements and any requests for future agenda items. Are there any? Mr. Richardson.
I'd like to see an agenda item considering dissolving the standing legislating committee.
Is there any objection to placing this on a future agenda? It involves a certain amount of staff work with respect to the pros and cons of it. It's only, I guess we could put it on without doing too much advanced work. It's a policy issue, right? Mr. Prater, can I ask if you have any objection to placing this on a future agenda?
I will just say it's at the pleasure of the commission if they'd like me to bring back, as I understand it, it was a adoption to start a ledge committee at some point. So I can go back and research what instigated the need for that and the actions taken by the commission at that time, and bring that information forward for reconsideration of that.
Or consideration anew, would that be sufficient to enable you to, I assume, make an argument as to why the committee and why that committee is not necessary? Is that a fact?
That would be the.
That seems to me a reasonable way to proceed.
Sure, if I may. I'm just curious if other LAFCOs have such a committee or we're the only ones.
Good question.
Briefly, to my knowledge, there are other LAFCOs with this committee, and oftentimes they have multiple committees. Some deal with finance and have a two-process for their budget and have a budget committee, and they have a ledge committee, and they have a number of other committees. And it's as everything else with LAFCOs throughout the state, it runs the gamut. But it's not uncommon to have a ledge committee.
Thank you. I would leave it up to the discretion of the board as to the timing of bringing it back. I assume that's okay with Mr. Richards.
As frequently as they meet, it's no problem.
Well, at some point, that there's going to be a lull in the actual legislative action, so you've got plenty of time.
Chair Stark?
Yes.
Uh,
Is that Guyer? That's Commissioner Guyer.
Yes. I think if we're going to make an exercise out of this, I would also like to, at the same time, hear from council. The commission formally took an action on this. And so I'd like to hear from council on how we undo that action.
Council?
Commissioner Guyer, my recollection is we did do a resolution establishing this committee. So we would, if you wanted to dissolve it, we'd do a subsequent resolution essentially repealing the prior action, and it can be done.
My understanding, you have to start afresh. It's not a reconsideration, because under Rosenberg's rules, you got to make it pretty much the same meeting, isn't that correct? It's not really a motion.
It's not a reconsideration. It's a total new motion
You would repeal the committee by the same kind of action that you did to establish it in the first place. Commissioner Aceves had a comment.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that. It's just, I don't think staff needs to spend a lot of time on this. It'd just be a resolution to dissolve, and then the board can speak on it. We've had a couple things today that could have gone to the committee. And I got to tell you, I think I've been on the committee 5 years at least, and I don't think we've met once. So I'd be in support of bringing this back for a discussion on dissolving the committee.
Fair enough. Are there any other commissioner announcements? I don't hear any. We'll now go to executive officer comments. Mr. Prater.
At one point, I thought I had a comment earlier in the day, but I've forgotten what that is, so I'll pass. I'll just note that after this meeting, I do intend to meet with the general manager of Vandenberg Village, CSD, and so we're going to talk about the MSR and what's going on. They have provided some responses to that, and we're going to continue our dialogue. So we are making progress on our MSR work. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, unless anybody's got any other brilliant thoughts or not, as the case may be, we are now adjourned to Thursday, May 5th, 2022 at 1:00 p.m. right here.